Okay, so this book was definitely kind of strange and didn't make a lot of sense. What were your like first impressions of The Stranger?
I feel like it wasn't really like it was kind of a story, but most of it was
Mhm.
like just his thoughts, and they were all just like like
Yeah,
super short like sentences and like kind of like all over the place. Like we were just like reading his thoughts.
definitely. So the sentence syntax of how Camus writes Meursault's thoughts actually really adds to the story because they're very short and unemotional, which is kind of like our main character, like himself. Um, Anything that shocked you, or like anything that stood out, or anything? I'm gonna share this screen. Well, okay, so we have a few discussion questions to go off of, and I guess like initially we can start off there and then go into places of the book that we didn't entirely understand. Okay, so the first discussion question that we do have is the title of Camus' little novel is The Stranger, and it actually comes from French, which is l'étranger, and the root is from Latin, which is like estrangement or alienation or separation, which isn't really like like seen in the English translation as much. Um, so I guess Merceau's very alienated, but from what is he alienated?
Maybe his emotions.
Okay, yeah, definitely. His emotions could be one
Like
thing.
he's very like apathetic.
Yeah, anything else that he could be alienated from?
Also, at the beginning of the book, it talks only about the only family member he has dies, like right at the beginning. So I feel like
Hmm.
it he doesn't really have any family to turn to.
Okay, so he's alienated from like other people, maybe? What about society? Would you consider him to be alienated from society as well?
I don't think like I thought someone was talking. I don't think he's like extremely like alienated from society because he still like interacts with people, but I think it's just like more difficult for him to. So it's like hard. It like
Okay,
goes back to the people thing. Like it's hard for him to like make emotional connections. I
okay.
feel like he's still kind of like in society. Like he's
Mhm.
still like living in a room and like goes to the beach and has like a relationship with Marie, but it's just like hard for him to interact with Marie sometimes.
Okay, so that emotional kind of relationship. Isn't
Yeah.
that's very similar from what we remember from Miss Lonely Hearts too? His like inability to actually connect with people. So that is another like form of estrangement. Did anyone notice the setting? So this is like in Algeria, and the time that this was written, Algeria was like a French colony. Um, and there was like a pretty big divide between people who were ethnically French, who were known as the émigrés, who came from France, and like there was like definitely a bit of a cultural split between them and the ethnic Arab people who were from Algeria. So anything important about that? Any themes that we can take from that, like maybe estrangement or alienation between that? Yeah, so how does Merceau like interact or treat indigenous people, the Arabs?
Well, he kills one of them.
He has like a negative connotation about all of them.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, for sure. That's like another point of where he's separated. Um, okay, let's go to number three and we can actually analyze his behavior a little bit more. So, how does Rousseau violate expectations of people at his mother's funeral? And how does this behavior later come to haunt him? Now, this is a really important one.
He doesn't show any remorse or cry or really any emotion, and
Mm-hmm.
he's very criticized for that, especially in the courtroom.
Okay, so
Like, it comes back to bite him in the butt and show that he's, like, not emotional. And, like, he did that. He, like, killed the guy just because, like, for no reason. Like, he's not emotionally, like, unstable. He's just heartless. It's, like, that kind of, like, came. That's how they, like, put him on the death row.
So, would you consider Meursault evil?
I don't really think he's evil because, well, he didn't like realize, basically he didn't realize that he was like not showing any emotion. He's like, oh, I just don't. He's like, I don't feel anything. I can't remember. He used to say something.
He was just kind of like, oh, I put my mom in the home because we just kind of didn't talk to each other anymore. Like, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. 1 sec. I'm just gonna re-screen share. Okay. So if he's not evil and he's just really passive, I guess that's where you see the difference between him and a character foil. Who would you consider to be the character foil of Meursault in this book? So someone who, like him, is kind of separated from society and doesn't really like have a lot of emotions that are necessarily good. Anybody like that comes to mind?
I think his name was, well, the older man with the dog, maybe.
I don't know.
It's just like who popped in my head.
I was going for Raymond because so Meursault's really like amoral. That doesn't mean he's immoral. So can anyone tell me what the difference between amoral and immoral is? No? Okay, I'll just go for it. So amoral is when you don't like pay attention to emotions or to like morals in general. It's not like you're specifically trying to not have morals or like you're very neutral. But immoral, like such as the case of Raymond, for example, who's quite literally a pimp and he beats like women. That would be immoral. So we're trying to just show Meursault as someone who's very passive and neutral and doesn't have any strong sense of identity. Okay. Before we go to like 4 and 5, I kind of want to go through some of the more important things in the book. So, what are like some of the reasons? Why does Meursault kill the Arab? That's like the climax of the book. But is there ever a reason?
The sun.
Yes, the sun. Any other more convincing reasons for shooting a man 5 times?
Didn't at some point he was like, well, I wanted to make sure he was dead. That's why I shot him 4 more times or something like that.
Yeah.
I don't know why. All I gathered was that the sun was really bothering him. And then he shot the guy because he was so like disoriented. And then he was like, well, I guess I better finish the job. I don't know if he's actually dead or not.
Yeah, it's true. Throughout the book, he's always complaining about the sun, how hot it is, and how tired he is. So if you like notice what he cares about the most, cigarettes. I guess like he occasionally has too much wine, coffee, and even Marie, but not like Marie as a person, more like Marie just as her body. He really is fixated on like the physical elements of the world rather than the I guess emotional or human elements of the world. And like he has like no spiritual side whatsoever. So he takes everything very materialistically. Okay. So again, back to the question about the Arab and why he shoots him. I think we need to think about some of the main ideas or themes of the entire novel. Can anybody come up with some like main themes about this novel? Think about how Albert Camus is existentialist. So it's very similar to what he believes.
What does that mean?
Okay, so existentialism is when the universe doesn't have any meaning. and like human life is very meaningless, and the only thing that we can look forward to is an inevitable death. So okay, I'm just gonna go for some themes. Could people at least maybe call out some examples? So the three main themes in this book I would consider is the absurd, and the absurd is like the irony, or I guess the irrationality of the universe, and the like irrationality of people's actions. It's like when people try to make a futile like attempt to find meaning where nothing exists. And after that, the meaninglessness of human life, of death, and finally the importance of the physical world. Does anyone have any examples they can like call out for any of these themes?
I guess for the first one, with like the irrationality of the world and like people's actions, like the main character kind of ridiculed the guy who was always talking about God and like trying to get him to believe in God, and he's like, well, that's stupid. No.
Okay, what do you think Merceau's main critique of God is? Do you think he just dislikes God because he doesn't like, I don't know, like religion, for example? Or do you think it has something more to do with the way he views the world and like the meaning behind the world that he believes is there?
I think that kind of connects with like the meaningless of human life, like the second theme, because he's like, well, humans are meaningless, everyone dies, like there's no way we were like created to have like this purpose.
Okay.
Like kind of like we're not going anywhere, like we don't have a purpose, we just die.
I remember him saying like, oh, it doesn't matter if I die now or die later because we're just gonna die.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Can anyone say anything about that quote from I forgot who it was. Was it like the nurse or someone, like caretaker or someone at the funeral, who said something like, there's no way out. Like, if you're gonna walk, it's gonna be hot and you're gonna end up sweaty, but if you end up sweaty, you're gonna get cold when you go in, or something. What was the importance of saying that there is no way out?
Does it mean like maybe like you can't escape the meaninglessness of life? Like no matter what you do, like you're still just gonna die.
Exactly. That quote perfectly it like refers to the inevitability. Oh, okay, I can't pronounce this. Inevitability of death, and all humans, regardless of their social like class or their wealth or like anything, everyone's going to die. So that's what that means. So that kind of ties into the fourth question. How can we interpret Merceau's encounters with the magistrate and the priest after he gets thrown into jail?
I guess that kind of just goes back to how he doesn't believe in God, with like nothing having like a meaning. And so he just kind of thinks like that idea is not worth his time to consider or to learn about because it doesn't matter. And he doesn't want to spend his like last cup. Like I remember like at the very end of the book, he's just like, I don't want to hear about this anymore. Like I'm gonna die soon. I don't want to spend my time learning about this. It doesn't even matter. So it just kind of like that kind of like makes the conversation very like tense.
Why doesn't he repent? Like, why does he feel no guilt towards the fact that he committed murder?
I think it's because he's just so emotionally detached from like other people.
Does he even view his crime as a crime?
guess not.
Anybody have thoughts about that? That's actually a pretty interesting question.
He never really like was like, oh, like I shouldn't have killed him. He never really like felt bad about it. It seemed like.
Yeah. I think he had another critique when, for example, the cop goes to Raymond's house and slaps him because Raymond's beating up his mistress. I guess it's like the absurdity of like, so some people are allowed to slap other people and it's okay within human society. Some people are allowed to commit executions if it's illegal, but some people aren't. So like, is there anything there? Is that like, what do you think of that?
I guess he was trying to like justify his murder by kind of like putting it in the perspective of, oh, I was just taking care of my friend.
Okay.
So, like, why is that? Why is me protecting my friend any different than bringing a person justice for a crime that they committed?
Okay. That's definitely a really interesting way to think of it. Anybody else?
Could it have been like because he was French and this person was an Arab person, so it was like maybe it was like something along those lines.
So maybe he like viewed him as like an other, like
Yeah, like he was like yeah, like basically viewed him as an other, like he thought he was above him.
okay. So maybe there's like
Maybe.
a bit of like almost racism there, maybe. Okay. Um, let's see. I have a few more things. What about like? Does anyone have any examples about the cruelty of love or the meaninglessness of like relationships or anything? I'm particularly referencing what's his name? The man, the man and his dog, and how he treats the dog, or for example, how Raymond treats his women, or even how Meursault treats Marie. Anything there about like how relationships in like human society are done? Are they good relationships, but are they still love?
I mean, I guess you could call it. I mean, I wouldn't call Raymond and his like women like love, no.
Mm-hmm.
But I think like the man and his dog could be kind of like defined as that, but kind of more like toxic.
Okay.
Because like once the dog does run away, like he's like really upset about it and like very distraught. But like when the dog first ran away, he kept saying that like phrase that I forget what the phrase was, but he kept like saying the phrase, but then he realized like, oh, the dog's actually gone. Like this is really sad. I love that dog.
But at the same time, he always is like, why can't this dog die? I'm gonna beat this dog, and yeah. Okay.
So it's almost like the love's being like overshadowed by annoyance.
Okay. So just like maybe like how love or human love like fails too. Like it's stained by like people's inability to perfectly love. Maybe that's like one of those things you can think about. What about the significance of the story that he reads from the newspaper when he's in his cell? I think it goes like there's this man who pretends to be a stranger and goes to where his mother and sister own a hotel, and he goes and shows off all his wealth and wants to reveal himself, but the mother and sister end up killing him, and when they find out that he's actually their brother and son, they kill themselves. Any significance behind that? Does it tie into any of the main themes of the book?
I guess maybe the first one with the absurdity of the action, like the irony,
Mm-hmm.
because it was like, oh, that's my family member. Oopsies.
Okay, yeah, so just like how humans are really like chaotic and the world's really chaotic, and there's no, if you try to find rationality or any justification for why things happen, you're always going to fail because that's just how life is. It's absurd. Um, Before we go on to like the fifth question, I want to kind of like examine the trial. So what about the court trial do you think is kind of strange? Because I feel like normally court trials, you're like, when you see them, you're like, aha, the truth's finally going to come out. We're going to get like a clear, concise verdict. But does the truth come out? Are the witness characterizations real? Are the lawyer, the defense lawyer, the prosecutor, are what they're, I guess, putting onto Merceau and characterizing him as, are those characterizations set in the truth or in their views of what the truth should be?
I guess this is a little bit off track of the question, but still kind of answering kind of the question. But it's almost like, because I know for me, like, I didn't really know what the lawyers were trying to argue for.
Mm-hmm.
Like is it the defense attorney?
Yeah,
The one that's against, like,
No.
that's arguing he's guilty.
Oh,
the one
that would be the prosecution.
Okay, that one, I didn't know what he was, like, trying to argue. Like, he brought up his mom and the funeral and how he didn't, like, wasn't very emotional, but I wasn't really sure what he was trying to prove with that.
He was, so the point of bringing up, like, character at, like, I guess, like, a criminal trial is to just show, is this something that this person normally would do? Is this, like, reasonable for this person to do? And also, like, if you're able to get lots of witnesses that say that you have good character, maybe you could get, like, a lesser verdict that doesn't end up with getting, like, hanged or, like, I guess, like, beheaded or something, because, like, then you would show that you're actually a valuable member of society. So the prosecution attorney during the entire time of the trial is basically just trying to prove that Merceau is unfeeling, he's barely human, and doesn't care for anybody, and, like, goes off and, like, I guess, goes on a date the day after his mother dies. That's basically what he's trying to say. So yeah, again, to my courtroom question, anything else that's a little bit weird about the trial?
I thought one thing was weird is, like, they talked about the fans and how everyone got a fan but him.
Wow, I almost didn't, like, catch the symbolism of that. That's really good. So the entire time, he's always in the heat, which causes him to murder, and he's always, like, being glared upon by the sun, and everyone else gets a fan except him. So that's when you see that he's being alienated and estranged from society, and he's finally being, like, seen as the one other who shouldn't be part of society and should be killed. What about the idea that if things don't have a very rational explanation, humans try to give them alternative explanations? For example, I think, like, was it Raymond or Celeste? Celeste actually says that it was bad luck, and Raymond says that it wasn't like actually meant to happen or something. So I guess they're the only people on Merceau's side who try to explain that the murder was an accident, which it was just bad luck from the universe. And neither of the attorneys really accept that. And why? And yeah, why?
It's like, that doesn't really, like, answer the question of, like, why he did it. It's just like, bad luck. And it's like,
yeah,
people don't really like that because, like, it doesn't really have, like, any logic to it.
I think
like, it's
so. The illogical events kind of threaten people and their worldviews, that everything has like a reason behind it. This kind of actually ties into the Old Testament like theology of blessings and curses, or the idea that like if you do something like there's a reason behind everything. And that's why in the court trial, what's happening is the court tries to construct a logical explanation for Meursault's crime. And that actually symbolizes humanity's attempts to find rational explanations for the irrational events of the universe. So they're basically just creating myths and like actually not, which is leading them further away from the truth, just to maintain that worldview that everything happens like rationally, that the murder must have happened because Meursault wanted it to happen, not because it just randomly happened. Okay, in like the 9 or so minutes we have left, what about number 5? What does Meursault discover at the end of his life, right before he's going to be, is it guillotined or hanged? I forgot.
I think it might be guillotine, because I remember he was like talking about how you're almost like hoping that it works, because
Right.
if it doesn't work, like I guess I
Right.
kind of thought that was inhumane. I don't know, so it might be guillotine.
Right, it's the guillotine. Yeah, so what does he discover that lets him like completely gain consciousness of his own life, of his own being, and
I think
yeah.
sorry to interrupt. I think he finally discovers that, like, he comes to terms with the fact that all life will end no matter what. And then he kind of finds, like, not peace, but, like, I don't know the word for it exactly, but he feels better knowing that, because now he can give up this false hope that maybe he'll escape and he won't be executed and he won't like have this suffering to end his life. But he realizes that no matter how you die, it is all the same.
Yeah, exactly. He finally comes to terms with the inevitability of death, and I guess he realizes that instead of like coming up with hopeless dreams of like being able to escape, or even like deluding himself with belief of like, I guess, heaven or something which he doesn't want to believe in, and he firmly sticks to his belief that the world is meaningless and that all humans are going to die, so I guess he can just accept it calmly. And there's a really nice quote. I'm gonna pull it up from, not this one, it was from, right, okay, it was this quote that I really liked. As if that blind rage had washed me clean, rid me of hope, for the first time in that night, alive with signs and stars, I opened myself to the gentle indifference of the world, finding it so much like myself, so like a brother really. I felt that I had been happy and that I was happy again. For everything to be consummated, for me to feel less alone, I had only to wish that there can be a large crowd of spectators the day of my execution, and that they greet me with cries of hate. So that's like the last sentence of this entire book. I guess besides the idea of him succumbing and like just surrendering to inevitable death, anything else you notice that's significant from this little passage?
Maybe he's like I guess he's been like angry,
Mm-hmm.
and so then he's like, well, that didn't feel very good, so now he's wishing that on other people, and kind of I don't know.
I'm not really sure I see that he's like seeing that for other people. I think
I just kind of thought, because he's like, my only wish is that all these people are going to greet me with cries of hate.
okay,
Or
but why would he want that?
maybe he'll feel paid attention to,
Okay.
like less alienated because people are paying
Exactly.
attention to him.
Yeah. So in this final like realization of the inevitability of death, he kind of like almost overcomes this idea of estrangement, and he's finally like accepts that he just wants people there when he dies, because he knows he's going to die, and as long as he has people present, even if they hate him, he kind of gets over that estrangement from society. Okay, any other last things you want to bring up about the book before I guess I end the session? Also, I need to just put this onto the chat just so you can like fill in your attendance. Yeah, and any last questions you want to talk about? Any points or things you didn't understand? Okay, if no one has anything, then could you please just like fill in the sign-in form, and then you're free to go. And I'll see you all tomorrow.